Hi everyone, my name is Megan Edwards and I'm going to be discussing maple syrup urine disease today. This is a genetic disorder that I chose to study for this course. The reason I chose it is because it directly relates to nutrition and dietetics, which is what I'm currently studying in grad school. And not only does it relate to my field of study, but I'm also going to be specializing in maternal and pediatric nutrition, and this particular disease uh, relates directly to infants and their diagnosis. So I felt like it would be the perfect genetic disorder to study for this course in relation to my current studies. So an introduction on maple syrup urine disease. This is a disorder that is inherited from an individual's parents. It involves the body being unable to process certain amino acids properly. The name of this disease comes from the sweet odor that becomes prevalent in an affected individual's urine. So this sweet odor resembles the smell of maple syrup, which is where it gets the name. The most common form of this disease is the classic type, and this becomes apparent shortly after birth, and it is also the most severe form and requires immediate reaction. The major characteristics of this disease, as I discussed on our previous slide, it is most known for the sweet odor of an infected infant's urine, that maple syrupy smell that comes with this disease. Once this disease progresses and becomes a little bit more severe, you can see characteristics such as acidosis, vomiting, abnormal movements, poor feeding, lack of energy, delayed development, a coma, and in absolutely extreme cases, eventually death, which would of course be the worst case scenario. Something unique about this disease is that it is most prevalent in the Old Order Mennonite population. This population tends to see this more frequently, probably because of their tendencies to interbreed with one another in this population. It's estimated worldwide that 1 in 185,000 infants are affected with this genetic disorder. However, in the Old Order Mennonite population, the prevalence is much higher at 1 in 380 newborns. So as you can see, that prevalence is way higher in the Old Order Mennonite population, and so it's seen much more frequently. So let's talk about the molecular causes of maple syrup urine disease. So it all starts with the amino acids, isoleucine, leucine, and valine. But first, let's talk about the genes. So the BCK-DHA provides the instructions for making the alpha subunit of a group of enzymes that are called the branched-chain alpha-keto dehydrogenase complex. And this complex works within our body. The BCK-DHB is another component of this complex, and it provides the instructions for making the beta subunit of this complex. In addition to these two genes, there's the DBT, and this provides instructions for making a part of a group of enzymes called the branched-chain alpha-keto acid dehydrogenase complex. And this protein forms this gene that is a critical piece of the enzyme called the E2 component. And as we know, enzymes speed up reactions, so this is a really crucial component to this protein complex that we have within our bodies. So breaking down these genes a little bit further to better understand, these genes provide instructions to making the proteins that work together as part of this complex. Simply put, this complex is super essential for breaking down the amino acids leucine, isoleucine, and valine, as I discussed earlier. These particular amino acids are particularly present in protein-rich foods, such as meats, dairy products, eggs, which are all crucial for the growth and development of newborns and just as people in general. So when one of these genes is mutated, the function of the protein complex is reduced or eliminated, and thus it's unable to break down those amino acids that we were discussing. And And the prevention of these normal breakdowns causes their byproducts to build up in the body, and these high concentrations become really toxic to the brain and the other organs, thus causing maple syrup urine disease and all of those complications that we discussed earlier, like the vomiting, the sweet smell of the urine. All of those complications snowball off of something as simple as the breakdown of these amino acids not functioning properly. So the abnormality of these genes that causes these detrimental effects, in the BCK-DHA, most of the mutations change single amino acids in the alpha subunit of the BCKD enzyme complex. The most common mutation replaces the amino acid tyrosine with the amino acid asparagine at the position of 438. Now, in the BCKDHB, the mutations change single amino acids in the beta subunit of the BCKD enzyme complex. They'll insert or delete small amounts of DNA in the gene, and this mutation replaces the amino acid arginine with the amino acid proline at position 183 in the beta subunit. So those two work, the BCKDHA, that is affecting the alpha subunit, whereas BCKDHB is affecting the beta subunit. And then we have the DBT. Now this changes a single DNA block changed in this, whether it's an insertion or a deletion or a small amount of DNA, will drastically change this gene and thus cause the effects that we were discussing. Now, this genetic disorder is inherited through an autosomal recessive pattern. And as you can see in the picture I provided, this means basically that you are afflicted with this disease, you're a carrier, but if you're a carrier, you're not going to experience any signs or symptoms. Both copies of the gene in each cell need to have mutations in order for you to see symptoms showing this condition. So, parents of an individual with autosomal recessive condition each carry one copy of the mutated gene. However, they don't typically show signs and symptoms of this condition themselves. And as you can see in the picture, it kind of shows the breakdown of how someone might inherit this trait. So breaking this down a little bit further, I provided an example pedigree that we used in one of our previous projects throughout this course. In this example pedigree, it provides a breakdown of how this particular disease can be inherited. It might be a little hard to read in the picture, but basically with this autosomal recessive pattern, if one parent is afflicted with this disorder while the other is only a carrier, there's a 50% chance that the offspring is afflicted and a 50% chance that the offspring is a carrier. So in relationships like John and Jackie, Josh and Devin, and Brandon and Caitlin, we have one parent that is the carrier and one parent that is afflicted with this disease. Now, Brandon is the son of John and Jackie. He had a 50% chance of being a carrier and a 50% chance of being afflicted with the disease. In this case, he's only a carrier. He marries Caitlin, who is afflicted with this disease, and now their children have the same probability. They have 3 kids, which are Meg, Brian, and Jesse. Meg and Brian, again, are only carriers, while Jesse is afflicted with the disease. So if you just continue to break down this pedigree, you can kind of see the mode of inheritance and how it progresses through a family line, especially in something like the old order Mennonite population that are doing a lot of interbreeding. We're definitely going to experience a higher percentage of people who are afflicted with this disease and a much higher percentage of people who are also carriers. So genetic testing for this disease. In all 50 states, screenings are performed on newborns as a routine metabolic screening. This is just a standard for all newborns that within 24 to 48 hours. So like I said, this test is performed pretty much immediately after birth. And the newborn screening for maple syrup urine disease is performed with tandem mass spectrometry using concentrations of those amino acids that we were discussing earlier, leucine and isoleucine. So if it's left untreated, maple syrup urine disease can lead to seizures, coma, death in extreme cases, as I discussed earlier. And the early detection of this disease is crucial to prevent the further complications in a newborn and to prevent it from getting any further than symptoms such as the sweet smell of the urine. So treatment for this disease, like I said, treatment needs to begin immediately once we become aware that an individual is afflicted with this disease. The treatment includes lifelong therapy to maintain an acceptable amino acid level in the body, and immediate medical intervention for a metabolic crisis. So afflicted individuals must remain on a protein-restrictive diet that limits the amount of branched-chain amino acids that they take in. So as I discussed earlier, leucine and isoleucine and valine are found predominantly in protein-rich foods like milks, meats, and eggs. And so it is important to restrict the intake of these branched-chain amino acids in someone who's afflicted with this disease. The restriction must start as soon as possible. Now, a lot of newborns and infants often are drinking breast milk, formulas to help them grow and develop. And like I said, milk is a huge component to isoleucine, leucine, and valine. So there's actually artificially made synthetic formulas that are available that provide all of the nutrients necessary for proper growth and development in a newborn. And so these formulas contain everything that the newborn needs to grow and develop, except for the isoleucine, leucine, and valine that you see being the factor in maple syrup urine disease. So overall, with proper treatment, someone who's afflicted with this disease can carry on living their lives normally, despite the fact they're on a protein-restrictive diet. Here are my references that I used to complete this project on maple syrup urine disease. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and thank you so much for listening.